handle the situation. And clearly, masks and social distancing do make a difference. I think that we've seen that both from the standpoint of the spread of COVID, but also other respiratory illnesses such as influenza. We didn't really have a flu season in Montezuma County this year. And I think that masking and social distancing have a lot to do with that. And I think there are other examples of how the use of masks routinely can help to reduce the spread of some of the respiratory infections that we may commonly encounter. So my feeling as county health physician and as an individual in the county is that it's still a good idea to try to wear a mask in indoor situations where you're going to have relatively close contact with people for more than the 15 minutes. That still is our definition of what a close contact would be, 6 feet or closer for 15 minutes or more. I think one of the primary concerns that I would want you to have is to protect yourselves and your staff. And when you've got meetings here that may involve a number of people, trying to continue to have some guidance that people would hopefully follow, and I realize not everyone does, that these masks and social distancing do make a difference, that do help to limit the spread of respiratory diseases such as COVID. So again, I think that continuing to encourage this, and you can decide how much you wish to require or how you want to be without masking, but it's still going to be very beneficial. The other thing that clearly is making a difference, and I hope that we could continue to encourage that as the city council, and we can talk about ways to do that, is the vaccine. One of the problems we're having in the county now is trying to find enough people interested in getting the vaccine. We have a good supply, and we continue to have availability of the vaccine. So it's really a matter of encouraging people to get it. My feeling is that we are going to have people continuing to seek the vaccine, not in the numbers perhaps that we did when it first came out, but as more and more people across the country and across the world become immunized and realize that based on those numbers that we're seeing relatively few side effects and high effectiveness, hopefully people will start to have some sense that the fears that may have kept them from getting it originally are not as high as the risk of the disease surging again. So, basically, I think that it boils down to trying to continue to encourage, masking and social distancing. Right now, with the numbers of cases in the county being relatively low, it's probably reasonably safe to have more people come in here, even if not all of them are wearing masks. We will continue to monitor the number of cases in the county. Both the county health department and the Colorado Department of Public Health will continue to monitor cases in our county. And if we did start to see an increase, such as some areas in the country have seen, then we would advise that more restrictions be put in place, particularly for indoor gatherings. So that's sort of my summary at this point, and I wasn't sure if that was the main issue that you want to talk about, but I'm available to answer questions, to discuss what I've just already mentioned.
Dean, do you have a question?
Yeah. Do I need to go?
Yeah, just go up to the mic.
I have a question for Dr. Akins. Dean Walker, the Parks and Recreation Director. Would be like the use of the temperature for temperature checks. We're still continuing that correct, so maybe just some input there, and also to high touch points. I mean, if you could address that a little bit, like we have not opened up our climbing wall yet because that's a lot of high touch points. And is just any thoughts on moving forward with those couple of items? Sure. And then also to the other would be the overall officials, this, if I understand it correctly, did they take a no restrictions standpoint? And would it be advisable as a county to look at the whole, how we proceed forward, or is it good for the council to make their own direction in moving forward with, what we have in place as a city?
Right. Well, I think the more that, I'll answer those in the order that remember them here, but I think in regard to coordinating, it's certainly always helpful if we can coordinate a response throughout the county. And if, for instance, the Montezuma County government and you wanted to try to maintain the same standards, I would certainly support that. I think there are a lot of people in our county who really appreciate all of the efforts that have been made and continue to be made as regards to what kinds of things we can do to limit the occurrence of COVID in the community and what types of things will help to keep us from having another surge. So yeah, I think it would be great if we could coordinate with that. And we, of course, at the health department work closely with the county commissioners. It's been great with our folks on the commission to work with them. As far as the temperature checks at the rec center, that's great if you can continue to do it. I mean, certainly, even though we're not finding very many people with symptoms who have COVID at this point, if it's not an issue and if it's reasonably well accepted at the rec center, then I think it's fine to continue to screen for symptoms and temperature. When the governor lifts some of these restrictions in a few more weeks, I suspect that people are going to want to try to return to normal as much as possible. And that doesn't mean that we can't encourage them to follow certain guidelines and try to help them to recognize that when they have symptoms, it's not good to interact in a situation indoors like the rec center. It may be that we're going to feel without public pressure that people are going to become more resistant to that. I just don't know. And without the mandate at the state level, it may be more difficult to get everyone to cooperate. And then as far as surfaces are concerned, we've certainly seen over this past year our experience with COVID that surfaces are not as big an issue as what we once thought they were. I think when this all first started, everybody was highly concerned about wiping everything down and making sure that we tried to limit the contact with our face after we touched some surface. I think that that's been shown not to be as big a risk as we once thought it was. And I'm not sure how you would quite deal with the climbing wall as an example. But probably if people are careful, maybe provide some alcohol there, that people can cleanse their hands before they go up the wall, cleanse their hands after they come down off the wall, maybe at intervals, try to wipe it down or wash it down. Again, I'm not sure how easy that is to do that, but probably that would minimize the risk sufficiently. And again, I'm thinking that people are going to want to become more and more back to normal activities, and the more that we try to restrict that, if it's not really necessary, it probably isn't worth the effort. So those would be my thoughts on that.
I have a question, Dr. Aiken. This is Mary Levy. The vaccine, is it available or safe for people under 16 years of age?
Right now, 16 is the cutoff age, but they are doing studies now with, I know the Pfizer is doing studies. I'm not sure about J&J, Johnson & Johnson, but they are looking at being able to give it to younger people below 16, but it's not approved for that yet. I'll just mention about the Johnson & Johnson. There's a lot of attention that's been given to the blood clot risk, and I think that that attention has been quite warranted. That you know, anything that looks like it could be a significant risk with a vaccine needs to be evaluated carefully. And one of the things that I think has made us all concerned about these vaccines is how quickly they seem to have been developed. And in fact, a lot of the vaccine development has been based on technology that was already there and already proven, but to take a step back, as our country and other countries have done, when we thought that there might be a risk of blood clots with the J&J, has certainly been an appropriate approach. It appears that that risk is quite small compared to the potential harm that the COVID infection can cause. And one of the big advantages of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is that it's a one-shot deal. And I think a lot of people have been waiting for something that they could just get that first shot and be done. So we will have it available in the county, and I think that we can be comfortable with receiving it based on the information that has come out of the recent reviews of the blood clot side effect. Other questions? Well, I guess I have one question. You know, I'm trying to figure out ways to help people to get the vaccine. And at the health department, we've talked about a number of different ideas. For instance, setting up a booth out at the home garden show, or you know, other places where we might be able to just offer the vaccine to people who want it, have it available. One of the problems that we have with the vaccine is that once you open the vial, then you have to use the whole vial. You can't stick it back in the refrigerator at the end of the day and wait for the next vaccine clinic. So, you know, we need to have enough people willing to get it at a given event to be able to make the most effective use of all of the vials. If you have ideas about venues where we might hold clinics, or if it would be helpful to have some kind of handout to give out at your council meetings or other places, like, you know, let me know, and we can have the folks at the county work on that so that you know, we can try to come up with a plan that might reach other people. If you hear of people not getting the vaccine because of a certain inconvenience reason, it's not, you know, a clinic isn't offered whenever I can get there, or you know, my work schedule won't allow it, or something like that. We have tried to the health department. They have after hours clinics. Haven't had a very good response to those, to be honest with you. So, you know, other feedback that you might give me or give Bobby over at the health department about things that might make it easier for people to get vaccinated. Please let me know.
That's a good idea, Doctor. Can you administer the vaccine outdoors? In outdoor situations?
Administering the vaccine outdoors, you say?
Yes. I was thinking like on the third Thursdays that we have on Zuma Park, would that be possible to offer vaccine?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it doesn't have to be on an indoor thing. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward process. You know, we like to register people so we know who's getting the vaccine and can keep a record of who's had it. They administer the vaccine after they've asked a few very basic medical questions. There are really very few contraindications to it. And then we ask people to hang around for 15 minutes afterward, just in the remote chance that they might have an allergic reaction. So we usually have a place for people to sit and wait for 15 minutes afterwards. But yeah, we can do it outdoors, probably under a tent or something like that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I suggest then like the Cortez Farmers Market? Because that starts in June and that's weekly.
I'm sorry, Rachel, I didn't.
Cortez Farmers Market to be posted up.
Oh, the farm, that's a good idea. Yeah. Let me talk to Bobby and Karen Dixon over at the health department. Those are both good ideas.
Any more questions or comments?
Yeah, Dr. Aiken, so our mask mandate, and kind of the way that we've structured our meetings after the last time that you were here, it's mostly based on the state dial and as well as the state mask mandate. Would you say that it would be reasonable for us to reopen the chamber even to people who are either unable or unwilling to wear a mask, as long as we kept up and encourage masking, but also kept the social distancing? And this is a large room as well. Is there anything else that we could do to kind of mitigate any risk?
Yeah, I think that the only other thing I can think of is to try to keep people out who have obvious symptoms. And of course, there are people who are asymptomatic and can carry the virus, but it would be having somebody in here that's coughing or sneezing is certainly a greater risk. So maybe some type of screening for people that come in, even if it's fairly informal, such as, if you have any symptoms of,
Do you feel
fever,
well?
cough.
Do you feel well today?
Yeah,
Questions.
please do not come into the meeting. But one of my concerns, obviously we want to limit the spread of, we want to limit the spread of COVID in the community, but I don't want any of you to get sick either. And I would hope that you've all considered or have had the vaccine, which is, tremendous protection. But I don't want to see the council members or the staff be exposed to it unnecessarily. So, I think you have the right to go ahead and set the rules based on what you feel is going to protect you, just as much as wanting to protect people who may attend the meetings. People who attend the meetings have the choice of being here or not, and they have a choice of wearing a mask or not. You all have to be here. You have to be here in public for these meetings. And so I think that you need to feel comfortable with how you decide that you want to conduct this.
Okay, any more questions? Thank you very much, Dr. Aiken. We appreciate your coming down here and speaking to us. And you have a good evening.
It's a pleasure. Again, as I told John in the email the other day, anytime you have questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to never consider it to be an inconvenience. So appreciate everything that you all do to try to keep us safe and healthy, and hopefully this is going to continue to do as well as it has in the last few months.
Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Aiken.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aiken. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is a presentation on budget changes. Finance Director Kelly Kusky. Good evening, Kelly.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and esteemed council members. Can you hear me okay?
Not really, no,
Okay, is that better?
not really.
Okay,
I can hear.
okay, is that better?
We're still kind of faint. Can you speak louder and right into your microphone as much as possible?
Sure. Is that any better, everybody?
What do you think?
Enough.
Just let it go.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to take a moment to expand on the information that I put in the memo about the items that we've approved, which are over the budget. So passing and following a balanced budget is really important. It's one of the things that's required in our city charter. It is also mandated by state law, and it follows best practices for GFOA, GASB, and GAAP. One of the items that was passed was the emergency purchase of the video cameras and the tasers for the police department. Certainly there are those instances where you do have emergency purchases that are needed, that are not planned for and are not budgeted. However, there's other items that we probably really should have waited to do a amended budget before we approve those. What the one item in particular is the addition of the assistant police chief. As we go through our audits for 2021, I honestly believe that that will most definitely be an audit finding, which is like the worst audit write-up that you can have. I've really thought about how we could get the auditors to say that that could possibly be just a recommendation, but at this point, I don't think that that'd be reasonable to even ask of them. It does look like we are going to need to do some mid-year adjustments, if for no other reason than to incorporate the funding that we're going to be receiving from the American Rescue Plan. And Chris is going to talk about those funds a little bit later this evening. And I also just wanted to make sure that we were all in agreement that those items that were approved outside of the 2021 budget, that when we get to the 2022 budget, that those will be incorporated from each of the departments that those are affected by, and that we aren't going to continue to fund those as additional funds from the general fund into the department. So I just wanted to make sure that we all understood going forward, some of the decisions that we make today can possibly have negative effects on our audits in the future. And I also wanted to confirm that that we are actually going to be bringing those expenses back in to the departments themselves in 2022. Is that everybody's understanding?
Yes, for going forward, and it was something we talked about at the time, was that the budgets, the department, the police department in this instance, would have to include that in their budget going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions?
Any questions?
I guess my question is procedure then, because when these are brought to council, I'm assuming that they go through you first and that they make sure that these funds are available before we approve them.
I agree. That would normally be the procedure. That's a procedure that I've seen previously, not here at the city of Cortez, but other entities that I've worked for. However, that particular item, the tasers, the body cams, and that additional assistant police chief position, there was never any conversation with me about those items at all.
Okay, well, hopefully that practice is from here on out.
I would hope so. I hope that we have that procedure nailed down. But it's something to keep in mind going forward. That may be a good question to ask. Not only do we have the money to pay for these items that we haven't budgeted for, but is it something that we could wait until we do that mid-year budget adjustment and then approve that? We already know we're going to need to do one of those mid-year. And so that might just be something else to keep in mind as you're approving requests that come from departments.
Any questions? Orly, do you have any questions?
Are we on?
What I understood when this topic came up, it wasn't they have checked on the finances, so that's come. I recall that the money was there, but I like what Rachel said, to change procedure, make sure everything goes to accounting first.
I appreciate that, Orly. I understand that that would be your understanding as you're approving those items, and hopefully going forward we have that procedure in place so that so that you and I aren't faced with that type of a situation again. Any other questions from anybody?
I don't see any. Thank you very much, Kelly, for
Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
good evening. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion on opening outdoor swimming pool. Director of Parks and Recreation, Dean Palmquist. Good evening, Dean.
Good evening, nice to be back live at the meeting, so appreciate that. And I have Michelle Duval, I believe, is on virtual on this to also help with the presentation, but I'm gonna kind of lead it out first. We approached the council, I believe, on March 9th about the opening of the outdoor pool because we knew definitely with staffing and some other things just to start that discussion. So with that, it was instructed for us to get in touch with Dr. Aiken, which we did. And I want to say Dr. Aiken did an outstanding job of when we provided him with the opening plan, he got back to us right away. He is very timely on getting back with people. So I appreciated his immediate feedback and everything. So before you is an attachment, is our reopening plan that we had presented to Dr. Aiken. And you can see one of the big things with that, we're trying to get to where we have, just like at the rec center, reserved time slots to keep control of how many numbers we have at one time. And I think that's a key element moving forward with anything, just to have these reservations in place so we can limit on controlling the social distancing as what best we can. And just so you don't have too many people in one place. I think moving forward, that's one of the big things when I'm looking at park shelters or any of this stuff, not just opening everything up to where too many people are gathering in one place. So I think we've had that in mind with the reopening plan. So Dr. Aiken did review that, and I think I have an email with his comments made. And some of that needs to be followed up with some of the suggestions that he had, and also with as we get closer each week, it may change a little bit on what is required or recommended right now. And in a month, by the end of May, we may have some different requirements or recommendations. So one of the things you saw, I think, is that we will try to do a walkthrough with Dr. Aiken as we get closer to the opening time, so he can see what we have in place with direction arrows and all the different things taken into consideration with the protocol. So I think that'll be good to have a walkthrough with him to get any other ideas he may have on site. So, and I think any questions with our reopening plan, at least what was before you?
When is the soonest you could open the pool?
Well, I think we're looking at just Memorial Day weekend, our regular opening time is what we're looking at right now. Just usually that, Friday of like Memorial Day weekend, Friday or Saturday, that's typically when we open.
I didn't have a question, and the plan, at least as far as I can say, looks good. I just appreciate you doing your due diligence to be able to open the pool this summer in a safe and reasonable way.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to give a lot of credit to Michelle Duval, my aquatic supervisor. She put together a lion's share of this reopening plan. I maybe added a couple other items, but she did a really good job of jumping on that and getting this plan together.
Okay, my question was, I thought I saw in here somewhere that you mentioned potentially not having private pool parties.
Right, with last year's budget, we were required to reduce our budget for 2021, and one of the proposed ideas was, or one of the proposals that we did cut was private pool parties and then evening swim time on Monday and Wednesday evening. And Councilman Medina, Councilman Medina, excuse me, that with that said, I think it's actually a good thing right now, because I see the private pool parties as being, if you look at a pyramid, you look at community benefit down here, and then you look at individual benefit up here. And I see like private pool parties as a more individual benefit. So as we go through this, and we probably have limited staffing, I think it's in that memo to say around 18 interested staff, interested high schoolers, college age that may come back and guard. On that, you might get 50 to 75% of those that actually pass the certification and actually are lifeguards for us. So I think we're going to have to make some choices along the way on what we can staff hours wise and what may not be able to be staffed. And we'll just have to see as we get more lifeguards signed up and trained and see actually how many numbers we have, because we've got the outdoor swimming pool, we've got then both indoor swimming pools to try to staff up for it. So with that said, so like when we look at, so to me, we want to staff our general pool hours that benefits the entire public first before we would get into any like private pool parties or anything, because that's more of an individual benefit.
Thank you for helping me understand that priority. I think that's a great approach.
Yeah. So I mean, really the 1 to 5, I think it's 1 to 5:15 time frame. That's probably the key hours we want to cover, because that is the more community benefit of who we serve. And this year, it's a different paradigm than what we've ever seen before, because our staffing, we might have 4 or 5 lifeguards right now. And so we've got to build that staff back up. That's probably going to take a couple of years to get back to the level of staffing. And also too, just hopefully luck of the draw of who we get in for managers. See, typically those lifeguards go to lead lifeguards, then they go to assistant pool managers, then they go to pool managers. And so there's a kind of a system you build. Well, with having COVID, and this is in a lot of communities, not just in Cortez, that system was stalled out, not where we had lifeguards employed. That's some of the ones we laid off and let go. So we only had a handful of lifeguards that we kept on. So it's just, you gotta kind of consider, we gotta build that base back up for lifeguards. And we may get, I think we do have a 1 or 2 possible lead lifeguards, pool assistant pool managers interested in coming back. So
Great. Well, I think it's an asset to our community, and I'm glad that it'll be utilized this year, and I think it's important to support. So thank you, Dean.
yeah, we're still kind of having dialogue with the swim team to see. I think there's kind of waiting and seeing where they want to go with things. So it's just initial conversations with them right now as well. They typically have gotten the swimming pool early mornings, like from 6 to 9 o'clock in that time frame. And then you got swimming lessons too, where that's somewhat limited, usually with the parents and the children. And that's a balancing act too of how much we pursue on. We may look at session 3 and 4 for swim lessons and not have anything like what would typically be session 1 and 2. And hopefully towards the latter part of the season, we may be able to offer some swim lessons. So I guess I would like if Michelle Duvall, if I can have her, if she has anything to add to the discussion.
I'm good, Dean. Thank you.
Dean, I had a question. Do you foresee any competition between other different cities and high schools in the outdoor pool? Swim competitions.
Swimming, yeah, I'd say, Mayor, maybe that's a little premature at this point to even, I mean, again, we're just starting those discussions with, the swim team. The other sports are opening up, I mean, with the baseball and the soccer and softball and BMX, that's all, I mean, as far as I know, they're gonna be having stuff, but I haven't really heard yet from the swim team what the plans are there.
Thank you, Dean. Any other questions? Orly, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dean.
Yeah, and I'd like to mention too, our leisure pool, we're getting that, water was getting filled today, Councilmember Bill Reese. So we're hoping if all goes well, maybe Monday we'll have that open into water lockers and fit for those that, have water fitness.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a discussion on boundary conflict surveying errors for vacant city-owned properties located south of Verde View Drive and east of South Cedar Street. City Planner Tracy Hughes. Good evening, Tracy.
Good evening, Council. Hopefully you can see the screen that I just shared.
Yes. we can see it.
Okay, great. It recently came to the attention of staff as a result of surveys that were being done on Verde View Drive for some street improvements that there are some overlapping property boundaries involving a city-owned tract and some adjacent privately owned property. The city was given the tract right here on the corner of Cedar and Verde View in I think the mid 2000s, and the survey that was associated with that deed overlaps the property boundaries on to the east of the tract, and the city can authorize a surveyor to correct the city's property description so that east property owners are not affected, so that their boundaries will not change. And basically the city would need to have a correction plat and a correction deed and some quit claim deeds, just quit claiming that area to the adjacent property owner, so that's completely clean. And that's what staff is recommending, that we don't challenge the property boundary and just allow that area of land to be the adjacent property owners. So essentially staff's looking for direction to proceed with authorizing the surveyor to create these new legal descriptions for that area of land. And I have another map that can show it a little more as well. It's not just that area between the city's tract and the adjacent properties. It's also a little sliver here adjacent to Cedar Street right of way. And in that case, you'd just be correcting the legal description between the city-owned property and the city-owned right-of-way. So do you have any questions?
I have no questions. Council?
It's pretty straightforward.
That's pretty straightforward. Orly, any questions?
I was gonna say I think
Okay.
it's good housekeeping there. I think to put everything correct and not to affect the neighbors there with me.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, as Arlena said. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate your speaking.
Can I
to us.
throw some, this is Green, can I throw something in?
Yes, sir.
Not
Go
to
ahead.
make, not to complicate it, sir, but we would need to do an ordinance. We would need to convey only the property in question, the little rectangle, to the other neighbors. And then we would just need to do whatever kind of correction deed to ourselves on the other part with a new legal description. So you would have 3 surveys in essence, getting you the 3 different legal descriptions, 2 new ones and the one that needed to be conveyed.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, thank you, Tracy. Good evening.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, the next item, yes,
So Mike, you will have an ordinance for the next council meeting?
If I get a legal description, yeah. I think what we need to do is authorize the mayor to sign the deeds and to convey the property. So if we can get all the pieces, parts together to attach the deed as an exhibit to the ordinance, that would be the easiest way.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
okay, we'll go ahead and take care of that. Okay, next item on the agenda is a discussion on four-way stop at First Street and Ash. Director of Public Works, Phil Johnson. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, City Council. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can show the images that you all are looking at. And oh, Tracy, you need to stop sharing, please. Okay, stand by. Okay. Generally, as a rule, whenever we have a request for a stop sign, the city would bring it to the council's attention for approval. We don't really need an official action per se, but we like to bring it to the work session so you can have comments and get perspective on it. This intersection is at First and Ash. And there is a east and westbound stop signs currently, but the north and southbound lanes are not, they don't have any traffic controls. And so what I did submit is one of our staff members went and took pictures from their vehicle so you could see what the condition is. This is from a pickup truck, and it's heading east on First, looking north on Ash Street. And as you can see, with the on-street parking there, the sight line, although it meets standard, is kind of problematic for people. This is traveling east on First and looking south across the vehicle. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Can everyone see my screen? I'm sorry if I'm moving too fast.
And we can see it.
Okay, great. So, and given the proximity to First Street and Main, you can understand if someone's traveling north on Ash and they see a stale green light, they're not gonna, they're gonna try to make it. So people have a tendency to, stay focused on their target and, try to make that green light. And this next shot is actually heading west on First, looking north towards Ash. And, the sight lines are okay there because the conflicts are coming from the south, not the north. And then again, traveling west on First, looking south on Ash. So, taking into consideration its proximity to Main and the sightline issues when you're heading east and looking north on Ash, I would recommend that we install those two stop signs on the north and southbound lanes. Given our condition now, we're getting requests, but when the Calkins project is developed, right over here on this image, you can see the old the sign for the soccer field there. Well, there's an access to the Calkins project, and there's going to be 3 apartment buildings there, and more. Where Second Street is going to be developed through. So we're going to have even more traffic loading here, and so staff and we are recommending that we go ahead and get these stop signs installed. If you all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them right now.
This is Councilwoman Medina. As someone who drives through that intersection several times a day, I think this is a good idea. It's hard to see around those cars that are parked. Everyone's in a hurry when they go through that light. Everyone is turning to go towards the post office, and it's just going to get busier. So thanks.
I'm grateful for the input from our customers and residents, because like I always tell them when they call me, I cannot see everything or think about everything. So their input is greatly appreciated.
The one question I had, this is Councilman Dobry, is do you have any concerns about it backing up to Main, the stop sign for, like, if you're traveling south, backing up towards Main?
No, not really. We have these north-southbound stops on multiple streets in our grid system off of Main. And our blocks are, they're the similar size on the north and south side of Maine. So I don't feel like that's going to be an issue, sir.
Phil,
Yeah,
this is-
I don't see no problem at all with that.
Phil, this is Mayor Levy. I think that's a good idea. I think we're being proactive considering the increased traffic in that area with those new apartment buildings. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you all.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Phil, for your presentation tonight.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a discussion on current status of city's water supply and water use restrictions ordinance. Director of Public Works, Phil Johnson. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening again. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen while I talk because it's 1,000 words. So, and I have Rich Landreth on the line, as well as our senior operator at the water plant, Randy Hunt. So, can you all see the graph?
Yes. Yeah, we can see it.
I'm just going to talk about this briefly, and then I'll get into some of the nuts and bolts of the memorandum I sent to you all. This is a snow water equivalent graph, a summary of, starts in the water year to the left, October 1st, and goes through October 31st to the right. And as you can see, on a typical year, which is the red, thickest red bar is an average year. You can see we have a fairly good increase and then a slow melt, and then it starts melting off pretty heavily in May. The green line is 2018, which was where we started with our VCAPS effort with the Western Water Assessment. 2019 was a really good water year. That's the yellow graphic that goes well above the average. And then we have 2020, which was the blue line. And then now 2021 is the black line. And so, I know that John pointed out, the amazing loss of snowpack we had. At one point, I think we made it up to 83%, Rich, if I'm not mistaken. And then it suddenly just started dropping like a rock. And we went from April 5th, we went from 69% and we lost, as of today, we're at 20% of snowpack. And the river has not really reacted like it typically does. We'll see some really significant flows coming into McPhee. This year we peaked at 232 cubic feet per second, and the lake only responded by an increase of about 1 foot in elevation, a little more than that. So we are still over 60 feet low from being full, and it's not going to really get any better. So what plays into this? A lot of, people generally look to the mountains and they see snowpack and they feel like we're in good shape because the mountains are covered. But if you can look at 2018, very dry year, that's the green year. 2019 was a great year, but, we had very little monsoonal flow after the water year of 2019 in that summer. So we went into the year with a really dry soil moisture content. 2020, is the blue line. You can see we actually started breaking the curve early on and exceeding average snowpack, and then it kind of stalled. Then we had a peak about in some late spring snowfall, but then as it melted off hard. And we really didn't have a great soil moisture content then as well. And now coming into 2021 with that dry soils, the low precipitation and less than average snowpack, the melt off wasn't reflected, like I said, in the river and or the increase in McPhee's elevation. Dolores Water Conservancy District, who is the operator of the McPhee impoundment, has given a dismal forecast for runoff and irrigation, as has Montezuma Valley Irrigation. I'm sure you're all aware, you've seen the articles. As of 4/19, there was an article in the journal that reflected this in all of the forecasts from Dolores Water Conservancy District. So what does this mean to us? Well, at 6,855 feet of elevation, the Dolores Water Conservancy District cuts off all irrigation. The remainder, which is about 12 feet of freeboard, we go down to 6843, which is the bottom of the intake, is at that point protected for M&I, which is municipal and industrial, but it's also AKA, it's also known as domestic. So we are okay in that light. But what's of real concern to us, Rich, myself, as well as the people that are on the Waters Our Future group, is another dry year like this year, or 18 or 19, or on 20, forgive me. And so we will go into another season with super dry soil moisture, and then have low snowpack or low precipitation. And then we come into the next year with very little buffer, very little carryover. And then we start getting into that elevation where we could, have issue with maintaining all of the domestic service in the valley. So, to that end, we have, re-kicked off our Waters Our Future effort. We were, basically like everyone else, lost a head of steam and all of our forward movement because of COVID, and it really tied our hands. We have, Rich and I talked to the Western Water Assessment last Friday about having all of our data in our VCAPS report, which was it was given to you in November of last year when we gave you that water packet that had all the data, the preliminary engineering report, the conservation plan, the VCAPS report, and all of the emergency response activities that Rich was ramrodding for us. We want to update that data, which stopped in 2017 to present, and they've agreed to do that. And they've also agreed to, help us work with public outreach. The climate scientist, Seth Aarons, is willing to come back down and or do a remote re-education so people can understand, temperature, soil moisture, and snowpack all are, integrally tied together. And that is how, the runoff yield is affected, even though there could be snow up there. Mother Nature takes her cut first, last, and always. So there's that. I mentioned the drought contingency plan, which is a pretty comprehensive document that we would work on getting, with our group, our Waters Our Future group, but also get professional technical support through the Western Water Assessment. We have engaged the Colorado Water Conservation Board to get a $20,000 administrative grant to fund this effort if need be. It would only require a 25% match, which could be fulfilled with in-kind service and effort on our part. If we can document our time towards this, we could even do this without any cash out of pocket. So, that's, I guess, a lot of bad news, but it's really not anything that we hadn't talked about. In 2018, we knew this was a potential, and that's why we participated in that pilot program. And now we're going to be working with Western Water Assessment on next steps. So this document isn't just getting sitting on a shelf somewhere, getting dusty, and getting that message re-engaged to our public and our customers, and the valley-wide actually is super important at this time. And I would like to, reach out to other agencies and try to get a group together, like Dolores Water Conservancy District, the domestic water providers that all get their water source out of McPhee, the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, and the like, and try to get a group together so we can, put forth a concentric message. Just mainly because of provider recognition, and it's not looking like, we're just trying to drive the bus on this. It's just about Cortez, because it's really not. We're all tied together with this water supply. And I think the more buy-in we get from these other agencies and jurisdictions, the more well-received the message will be. So that's, the current status of the water supply, and I would engage any and all questions right now before we talk about the next issue, if anyone has any questions.
I don't have any.
So I'd just like to make a comment. Wanted to thank the Water's Our Future group here for doing all this research and getting together, contacting the Western Water Assessment Group also. It's really important that we keep on top of this because it's very serious and it's not going to go away. So thank you, Phil, and your group.
Thank you, sir. I'll make sure I share that with the group. Thank you. They'll
Well, I just had
appreciate
a
that.
question about, with the alternating days, how, does that affect, like, if someone has a drip irrigation system, something like that, would that only be alternating? I'm looking at it, I'm kind of looking for a way to encourage people to use the most efficient means possible, and I don't know if we could build that into the ordinance of like ultra efficient systems are allowed to run non-alternating days, like they could run every day.
Right, okay. All
Is
right.
there, is something like that something that could work, do you think? I think part of this is gonna be about shaping behavior to like get people to think about it and be more efficient about it. So kind of a carrot to steer people towards more efficient things. That I just had thought of that as a potential idea. I wanted to see if you thought something like that would be beneficial, if it would provide savings, water savings that way.
Well, that's, I don't disagree with that, Councilman Dobry. And that's why I really have brought this to your attention, only because I wanted to have this discussion. I wanted council to be aware of what we're doing. Mike Green has some comments on some aspects of this ordinance with regards to enforcement. But before I get into that, let me just, talk about what we are trying to do and bring to the table to discuss, which is we already have a water use restriction ordinance in place. It's been in place since 2004. It has been a restriction of May 15 through September 15 in hours of irrigation from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., which, it's served its purpose, but, it's really kind of not as effective as we really need it to be. So what we're bringing to you tonight to discuss and, vet, and which is we just want to change the dates of the bookends for this ordinance, the time of day, and then, as you mentioned, going to odd and even irrigation. So I do have some good news about this. I mean, we use 185 gallons per day per capita for the whole city on an average annually. In the winter months, November, December, January, and February, or even December, January, and February, our indoor use per capita and through the entire city, which includes commercial, is 90 gallons per day, per person per day. So that means that we're really, we could be more efficient about that, but we're still well under 100 gallons per day per person. So that means we do use our water efficiently. So a lot of our water that is consumed is for outdoor use. So that's what's driving this. The date changes. We just want to mimic the irrigation season, which is April 1 through October 31st. We want to change the 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. because of the heat of the day. And also, as everyone's aware, generally by 9 o'clock in this neck of the woods, the wind generally gets going as the day heats up. And then the most, as you mentioned, Councilman Dobry, that the really biggest issue here, and I know we're going to get pushback on that, is the odd address can water on odd days and the even addresses can water on even days. So, as I mentioned in the memo, that given the lateness of the year, we would just use this season as a learning teaching situation to enable public messaging and outreach. So, I know that, Mike and I had a discussion, and I think he'll want to talk to what we discussed, but, I don't disagree with that perspective, Councilman. I think that, if we have a landscape that is xeric in nature, and they can, we can look and graph on their minimal use And so I think that that is something that can be discussed, and that's why I want to bring it to your attention and soundboard it with you. I know that as a matter of this being discussed at a work session, we're going to be getting some interest from our public, and pending how you guys feel about this thing moving forward, we would set up an email address to receive comments and queries and questions, so we can develop this into something that is beneficial. And like you said, it's a behavioral change. It's not about control. It's not about trying to take things from people or affect their lives. It's really about trying to make the use of our limited water supply to be used and consumed as efficiently as possible. So if in fact we have to go through this as a matter of course on a regular basis, our customers' quality of lives will not be adversely affected. So, I think that's a really good comment, and I would like any and all suggestions, because, at this juncture, we're just trying to, throw something at the wall and see what sticks. Now, you mentioned a carrot, and we want to have a carrot as well, and that is, we don't want to just, throw some words on a wall and then start hammering people. That's not right or just. And so we're going to train and get certified with the Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an irrigation council or irrigation association. So they are certified in being able to do water audits. So we can provide a certain number of water audits for irrigation users to show, how they may or may not need as much water as they're using. And we can do that with on-site visits. We can poll their their drinking water meters and show them graphs on what they're actually using over the course. Because everybody, I know I'm as guilty as anyone else. I want to help everyone get better about our water supply and our sourcing. So I'm open to any and all suggestions. Rich or Randy, do you have anything to add?
Phil?
Yes.
Hi, Phil. This is Brenda Van Kuren. I'm going to turn on my video. I'm a member of the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee. It happens that the Arts Committee had supported this anthology called Wet, and our former chairperson had helped spearhead the effort. So this book is now published. This is an anthology of written prose, poems and stories that are around water. And it's not necessarily on the nose about conservation, but there is this respect for conservation. So if you could consider how the Arts Committee could assist you with promoting a message to the community in a way that brings up maybe emotional respect for and appreciation for water and conservation, think it through. And perhaps there's a way to bring some art and reading of literature for an event where you are bringing all of these different constituents together and these different groups together. So I challenge you to think about that. I will send you an email message and invite you to do that. What I'm trying to encourage the Arts Committee and the City of Cortez staff in doing is reach out to the Arts Committee, invite us to help you solve some problems in an artful way. It's a good asset of the city. In the meeting later on today, the request for the cultural center is going to be on the agenda. And so this would be our first request for funding out of the Arts Committee's budget. I'd be happy to ask for more funding to support something like how can we conserve water in this region? And how do people treat water and treat it with respect and appreciate it, especially when we are in this prolonged drought. We've been in a drought for a long time, and it's going to last for a long time. So that's what I offer to you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Phil, this is Councilwoman Medina. How do you know what the average family uses in gallons per month of water, like the average household?
I did that calculation, and I think it's less than 4,000 gallons per day per residential account. And I just peeled that account class out by itself. And that's in the winter months. So when you're really looking at what I like to call the living block of water, which is what we need to subsist on a regular basis, take care of our household necessities, et cetera, it's about 4,000 gallons per day per residential account in the winter. And then that goes up by a factor of much more. The average, I've seen high uses of 50, 60,000 gallons for a single site in a month for irrigation. So that is some data we want to get out there, as well as by re-engaging our water as our future effort. We're going to be participating in Third Thursdays again this year because they're happening again. And we did a lot of workshops with landscape architects and these greenhouses and suppliers and nurseries in the area. So that data set is something that we would develop so we could show that what happens between winter and summer months. Ma'am. Yes.
Okay, because I asked for the water rates to be shared with all of council, because I feel like that might be another approach for water conservation, is kind of having a tiered rate system, so you have the base, and then it's $3.22 per 1,000 gallons. But maybe after you hit like the 5,000 or 10,000, then that doubles, and so then that way, if people really want to use that much water, then they've got to be willing to pay for it. Otherwise, they'll work into their budget to conserve more. I just feel like we could approach this from many angles. And then I also want to ask about, do you have good mechanisms to identify leaks, in a timely manner?
Well, we do. We do that through observation. And then, of course, Rich and Randy have their finger on the pulse of flows. Even given, it's a lot easier to find during the off-peak season, because, flows ramp up so quickly in irrigation season here. Other than that, it's, we just, rely on reports from our customers. And then, we're all over the city doing all kinds of other work, streets and whatnot, that our operators have their eyes on the ground and paying attention to that.
Okay.
Now, with respect to your the discussion about an increasing tier block rate, we've been we wanted to have a rate study done, but of course our finances got kind of hinky, so we couldn't. But I have a resource in the University of North Carolina Environmental Finance Center, which would take all of our data and crunch it and provide us with some options with regards to rate structures that they do for a living. They do big data analysis, and they would look at the health of our enterprise, cash on hand, and we could get that help for free. And but that, of course, I need to have several years of audits and all of that stuff for them to do that.
Okay, that sounds like a good goal, though. Go ahead.
Any other questions or comments for Phil? Orly, do you have any comments?
No, I was just gonna say the water restrictions. I guess if we do it one way, you've got to treat everybody the same. I mean, the restrictions is for everybody the same rate. I mean, not rate, the rules, time and days, or whatever we decide to do, or staff decides to do. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, the community.
Orly, this is Green. That's one of the things Phil and I were discussing. We have to figure out some enforcement methodology to make this work. Just for example, right now, if you walk up to a large building, an apartment house, a hotel, the hospital, nursing homes, assisted living, whatever, and there's 2 violations, the ordinance reads, we shut the water off to that building. Same as we would to houses. And then there's a reconnect fee. So we're going to have to figure something out to make that all work. Like, what are we shutting off? Phil had a suggestion we can maybe just shut off the irrigation water. We may have to work with, we don't shut off water on Fridays over the weekend. There's going to be some, how are we going to work turning water back on and collecting the reconnect fee? There's some, what are we going to do for indigent people who maybe don't have it in their budget to turn the water back on? There's some health and safety things we're going to have to work into this all as well too. So it's a good idea. We just need to fine tune it.
Okay, thanks.
You know, I agree with that. And, you know, it's really about how we frame the message. I think Councilman Dobie said it best when we're just trying to change behaviors and awareness. And, you know, I think that, you know, we should keep that in the forefront rather than, you know, another mechanism to, you know, just another stick. And so, you know, we don't want to, that's not our goal. Our goal is not that. It's about awareness and you know, protecting our precious resource that's very limited, as you can see by the graphic.
If this new ordinance goes on, would it be effective this summer?
I would say that, you know, given the lateness of the season and the things that we have to talk about, I would say that no, we would not, I would not make this a hard and fast ordinance this season. It would be a learning and a voluntary, you know, engagement and educational thing. I think, you know, if we have some, you know, serious pushback and resistance, then we, you know, I think we just re-engage our education and why we're doing this and what the motivation and goal is. And I just want to, you know, I want to make sure that you're all okay with Rich and I engaging all of these other agencies in the area and try to come up with a concentric message. I don't want to, you know, say I'm speaking for the city outside of our jurisdictional boundaries without your awareness and approval. So I want to know that you're okay with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I agree there. But the only thing I was asking that if it does go on, you know, start to educate the community, give them like a year's notice or something going on, because that way they might change their landscape and or how they, like you said, plan how to irrigate the irrigation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Phil, for keeping on top of this. It's good to be addressing this situation before the summer gets here and people start watering their lawns and to send out outreach to the community and let them know that we're doing our part in conserving water and sending out the message to be water wise. And thank you very much for all your efforts. And we as a council appreciate that very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our agenda items. Are there any items of discussion for the council?
Yeah, I had an item. A while ago, when we had, we heard from the business community, one of the things we heard was about updating our local preference for vendors. And it's just something I wanted to kind of bring back to the council, kind of bring it back up to the top. I think we need to make sure that we can support the local businesses that do work for us. We also are responsible for public money, so we don't want to be giving away the store. But I think it would be reasonable for us to look at that and look at maybe raising the limit, kind of defining local as Montezuma County, and maybe even have possibly an additional preference for businesses specifically within city limits as well. And I don't know, like we don't need to obviously take an action on it, but I just kind of wanted to bring it back to the council as something that I think we should look for.
I think we could all agree on that, Robert. Thank you.
So Linda, can you make that a workshop item coming up? Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion items? If not, I adjourn this workshop meeting and we'll reconvene at 7:30 for the regular agenda. Thank you.